And I think there's two areas of mind shift that are most critical, is that we have to believe that they're in our own democracy. And we have to believe that democracy can work free of corporate money and corporate influence, and we have to fight for it. And that is one of the most fundamental problems in the way of rapid action on climate and everything else, justice issues, human rights issues. And the second mind shift is we have to trust the youth and youth leadership and believe in intergenerational coalitions. That's crucial, and we have to get in behind those students and young activists and trust in their vision of change, even if movements are messy. Hey, they're made up of people. So sometimes it's complicated to support movements, and it's easier to drop money behind a big NGO, but that's not always the best pathway for social change.
Thank you very much. John Powers, you have been involved in the philanthropic world for well over 30 years, I guess, and your perspective, and also about the alliance that you've been working on building over the last 15 years. Thank you.
Well, first I want to thank Chip and our for this opportunity. Each of us is a philanthropist because we have resources that we can give. I will suggest that the two main resources, one tends to think that money is it. The most profound and important resource we have is our time. Okay? So recognize that every one of you is a philanthropist because you can give your time as well as money, number one. And what are you going to give it to? That's the question you got to start with. What is the major issue that needs attention? And clearly, climate is it. And what can I, with my various resources, do about it? And every one of you here in the room can think about that. And my distinguished colleagues on this panel, you're going to see examples of what they have decided is the most important problem and how with their resources, time and money, they're going to make a difference. So each of you, I challenge you to say, what can you do with your resources? And you're going to see some examples from each of us of what we have chosen to do with ours. Now, I've had the privilege of being on the board of a foundation, 3 foundations, and on the board of nonprofits. So that's an expression of where I'm giving time. And then the opportunity is to give money with grants and personal assets toward things that I think are going to solve problems. Now, for example, the foundation grant. What is a problem? A problem, there's not a level playing field with renewables and fossil fuels. So we decided to fund regulation on coal ash ponds to internalize externalized costs. Right? That way you can start to overcome some of the subsidies that the fossil fuel industry has, make it fair for the renewable energy industry. We funded we funded Earth Justice and the Southern Environmental Law Center, both of which worked on those issues. The second thing, I think that even a larger problem, not a scientist, but from my access to data, we have a larger problem with methane than we do with coal. Because methane is so much more potent, and the fugitive methane throughout the system, I think, is the real problem. We don't know. People are not tracking. So we gave funds. I don't know if you've seen on some of these other slides, and you've probably seen elsewise, video images of methane escaping from facilities, which you can't see otherwise without these forward-looking infrared cameras. So we funded a group called Earthworks for them to get FLIR cameras, to get their staff trained, certified on it, and then to catalog these videos so that the people in various communities could, if there were video footage available, they could pull it out and use it for public hearings and that sort of thing to show that the problem can be made visible, both literally and in broad scale. Also with each of us, whatever our level of investments, Tom Van Dyke talked about your 401k. Well, foundations, and Tim Worth talked about how endowments can be used, and of course that's the premise of the Divest Invest campaign, is what do you do with a foundation setting where you complement the grants you're trying to make with the way your portfolio is invested. And it's stunning how many times they're at odds. That you may be trying to clean up the air, clean up respiration, and at the same time you're investing in a coal company. It could be in the same community that you're trying to clean up. So you try to make that consistent. So for one example, when we were doing something complementary with our portfolio and our grants, the Educational Foundation of America was one of the first funders of the Divest Invest campaign to get students to open chapters on college campuses. That also goes to Tom Van Dyke. I've had the privilege to work with Tom, who has advised me on how to do socially responsible impact investing, ESG investing, and what to invest in, what to avoid investing in. And this is clearly expressed in the Divest Invest campaign, where you divest from climate problems and invest in climate solutions. Each of you could do that with whatever kind of investment level you have, whatever portfolio, whatever retirement plan, or if you're invested in the stock market, even the kind of house you buy, you can choose that there's ways to be climate beneficial. The other side of the coin, besides giving away money, is giving time. And as Chip pointed out, I was co-founder of a group called the Alliance for Sustainable Colorado. We're now doing business as the Alliance Center. We have a building in downtown Denver that has 53 sustainability-related organizations to create the synergy of co-location. It's also 18 blocks from the state capitol. We did this in our state capitol for that very reason, is to coalesce power and have people be able to work on it. And I have to give profound thanks to the Rocky Mountain Institute and Amory and Hunter Lovins, because having visited their facility back in 1984, I have been bitten with a green building bug, which everybody should do it. We do it. The Alliance Center has earned 4 LEED certifications. Our 2 most recent are platinum. This is with great thanks to Amory and Hunter, because they inspired this. And why? Because people who want to come, a building with how many, what, LEED cert you're doing? They want to come see the building, and the point is it's a bait and switch. Because the real reason we want them to come see the building is to see collaboration in action that's effective, and they can feel hope, and they can go home, and they can feel a way to be inspired for what they can do themselves with their resources of time and money. So my current priority, and you'll get to hear this afternoon at 4:45, and I can't emphasize more to you the importance of the panel, between David Orr talking about what's happened to democracy and can we make a sufficient national federal response to climate which impacts the world. If we don't do it in the United States, and if we don't do it at the federal level, we are not going to make the progress that we must make that's proportionate to the enormity of the crisis. So David Orr has been putting together a book which has just gone to a publisher with 32 authors. He's doing 14 gatherings from Boston to Los Angeles, San Francisco to Montgomery to Washington, D.C. to get the word out what needs to be done federally. In Colorado, under the leadership of our Secretary of State, Jenna Griswold, who will be presenting with David Orr as an example of what a state can do, as a national example that is a model for other states to be able to follow and to take the action that's so critical that must be taken. So 4:45, come see that. And I give great thanks also to the Colorado Legislature, to Governor Polis, and to Senator Mike Foote, who is here. And I encourage you to seek them out, find out what they're doing, find out how you can support it, find out how we can make the most of this. And I thank each and every one of you, and especially my panelists, for what you're doing by being here, by learning, by sharpening your skills, and targeting what is the most important thing that needs to be done, and how you can look at your array of assets with your money and with your time of what each of you are going to do. And I thank everybody who's watching this live stream. So with great gratitude for all of you, together we're better, and this is the perfect representation. And thanks again to AREDAY for giving us this opportunity.
Great. Well, thank you, John. Thanks for your extraordinary leadership in the state of Colorado. I've been encouraging you to think about getting an alliance center in every state capital in the union, not just Denver. Maybe the next one should be the District of Columbia to really have as big an impact as you can. His model is extraordinary, housing at below market rate. I think it's over 40 different nonprofits, some for-profits now too, but it's an extraordinary building, downtown Denver, 1 block away from the Union Station. If anybody is going near there, do yourself a favor and pop in and see what that's all about. Now, and also, thank you for the power of the philanthropic checkbook, because I know that goes a long way. And being a small nonprofit ourselves, you know, we pride ourselves in trying to make $1 turn into about 20 or more. So thank you, and thank all of you for that. Now, Spike Buckley, well, you have been quite an extraordinary fellow, especially in the last couple of months. I attended an amazing event that you put together called Earth's Call, and maybe you could tell us a little about the Earth's Call Foundation and the relationship that you're developing with the MacArthur Foundation and some of your plans going forward along the lines of climate, philanthropy, and funding the solution.
Yeah, well, first it's a little hard to follow these two. In fact, there are 4 really distinguished people up here, and one other also ran sort of. I came out of the sort of from behind the curtain with Earth's Call, more because I was more or less forced to, given the way it developed. I had preferred for years to be relatively quiet, behind the scenes, supporting some people who are in the audience who know me pretty well and what they do. I reached a point in the evolution of Earth's Call where I had to make a decision as to whether the whole project was going to go forward or whether it was going to be stopped. We had a lot of trouble internally, and this happens when you're involved in anything that's somewhat disruptive. So I tell you that simply because it was sort of a seminal moment for me. I was watching what was going on at the federal level in Washington, D.C. I was increasingly frustrated by the pace of change, because we all know we have to move very, very quickly to try to address effectively these insanely huge problems that we have to deal with. So I hit this moment, and I should tell you that in the evolution of Earth's Call, I was the only funder, so there was a lot of money involved in this. It was an event involving as many as 2,000 people in Aspen in May, and there was this point in time where I had to sort of figure out, did it make sense to go further, to get deeper in the hole, or should I just cut the cord? I went forward for the simplest of reasons. It couldn't be any simpler. We have no time. We have no time to deal with all of these problems, and I felt that if that 2-day experience, which turned into about 4, thanks to some weather, if we emerged from that with one significant development, then the expenditure of all the funds involved would have been worth it. And I believe we have. I believe we've seen the feedback now that makes me believe that we have come out of that with at least one very significant development, and possibly a handful of them. So I tell you that story because it is in line with what John said, that you should decide what means the most to you, where you think you can make the most impact, and go for it, and go for it hard. Don't hold back. We have no time. We absolutely have no time. We can't talk about this stuff incessantly, which has happened more or less to date. There have been tremendous accomplishments, and I don't mean to diminish the import of what's been accomplished, but we are climbing a mountain, and we're at the bottom of the mountain. So all of us individually have to shift our minds into that state, which calls on us to do more than we ever have before, and don't think twice about it. Just do it. I think it was Mother Teresa who at one point said something like this. She was addressing a group, and they wanted to know what they could do, and I think these were wealthy people, and she said, give till it hurts, and then give some more. And that's what we have to do. That's really what we have to do. Take off the constraints. Just free it up and do everything in your power to make change. And I believe that we can do or accomplish an immense amount. One of the things that's interesting to me in coming to a gathering like this is that I'm able to see some of the best and brightest, and that's really, really encouraging. Because each one of those people that I see here represents a much larger group who are also very exemplary and capable of doing great things. So my message is just that. Give till it hurts, and then give some more. And I think maybe we'll have a chance.
Thank you, Spike. Thanks for your words of wisdom, and I think Mother Teresa really had something there. Moving over to Hank Rogers. Well, what can we say about Hank? He's the blue, Tremble's pointing out his socks, and so we probably shouldn't take note. Never matching, and always colorful, like Hank himself. So Hank is an amazing friend of mine. He serves on the AREI Board of Trustees. He has his own nonprofit organization called the Blue Planet Foundation, and coming up with the Blue Planet Alliance. But one thing I want to mention about Hank is that he is totally 100% invested in the transition to 100% renewable energy by 2045. He put his money on the table when it came to the issue in Hawaii and helped to get the first law in the United States of America where it's a mandate for the state to be 100% renewable energy by 2045.
Did he give till it hurt?
Yes. And now I know that Hank is working on something to take that to a global platform. So Hank, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about your plans going forward.
So when it hurts, I know when it hurts is when I have to beg my wife, and then it really starts hurting because I have to give up a lot of things. Well, if you can't do that, if you want to do that, it's okay, it's fine. Anyway. 13 years ago, maybe 14, I had a life-changing experience. Found myself in the back of an ambulance on the way to hospital with 100% blockage of the widowmaker, which is the largest artery in your heart. If I was on the Big Island that day, I would have died because we don't have a major angioplasty facility. The net of that is I found my missions in life. I said, I'm not going, I still have stuff to do. And then I figured out stuff. The first stuff came to me in the back of the newspaper and said, oh, by the way, we're going to kill all the coral in the world by the end of the century. And I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I mean, I moved to Hawaii when I was 18, fell in love with the coral, obviously, surfing and diving. But that represents, like a significant portion of the in the ocean. And we're talking about coral. We're not even talking about the plankton, which we can't see. That's also going to be affected by that. Anyway, I founded a foundation, the Blue Planet Foundation. We're going to end the use of carbon-based fuel. That was as simple as that. And we thought about all different kinds of ways, and I put in a bunch of money. And the idea is shotgun and find out which one worked. And the one that really hit it we got to have 100% renewable by 2045. Now the electric company, the utility, who fought us all along the way, said we can't do it. After we passed the mandate, they actually looked at it and they said, you know what, we figured it out, we can do this, and we can do it by 2040. It's like, where the hell have you guys been? You know, and then we did a calculation, off the, back of the envelope calculation, that would save ratepayers. And there's only 1.5 million of us in Hawaii. $7 billion. I mean, wow, what's going on? So, but the best part of it is now we are working with the electric company and we've already passed the law saying we're going to change the business model because it used to be 10% on top of the price of oil. That's basically how the PUC agrees to give them a rate increase. It's 10% on top of the prices. So on Oahu, say it's 32 cents, so maybe 4 cents is their profit, 28 cents is the cost of fossil fuel. If we say switch to renewables, which we already have a bunch of PPAs at 8 cents, and say, okay, you can make 5 cents on top of the price of renewables, and that means a 20% increase on their profitability. And all of a sudden, magically, like 2 weeks ago, they came out with a 900 megawatt renewable energy RFP. 900, that's half of Hawaii. I mean, like, obviously they smell the money, their shareholders smell the money, and that's what's going on. Every island in the world has the same problem. We import energy and we suffer. We pay 4 times, 5 times more for energy than everybody else does. We started moving and it started gaining traction early on, and we passed some law that helped rooftop solar. And we predicted in 2 years that we were going to have like 30 megawatts of rooftop solar. And in 2 years we had 300 megawatts of rooftop solar. So, I mean, we just basically created the incentive for those companies to come into existence. And at the peak, we had 200 solar installer companies in Hawaii. Now, all of a sudden, the electric company goes, whoa, we can't handle that much intermittent or unstable electricity coming onto the grid. We're going to limit you to, first it was 15%, then it was 20%. These are all numbers that they just pulled out of a hat. I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm saying that we were looking at the end of the solar business because the permits for interconnecting solar to the grid basically stopped. So then I said, okay, what's going to solve that problem? And the answer is storage. So I have another group, Blue Planet Research, where we're studying storage. And then I have a little ranch on the Big Island. We took that off grid.
How little, right?
It's little. It's nothing like something you'd find in Texas. Hello. 28 acres. Anyway, so we have a little ranch on the Big Island at 2,800 feet. Anyway, we took the ranch off grid, and we've learned how to live not being connected to the grid at all. We went through a year of vanadium redox flow batteries, which were a disaster, and they're not scalable in this small direction. They're scalable into the grid scale, but they're not scalable into small, and they're a nasty chemical. Now we have 4 vats of vanadium redox acid, whatever, sitting there waiting for something to happen. The company went out of business, or they were bought by the Chinese. We never heard from them again. Prudent Energy turned out to be imprudent. But the net of the storage, we did find a good battery. We found a battery, it's lithium iron phosphate. Yes, it's lithium ion, but it doesn't have any cobalt, doesn't have any of the stuff that catches on fire. And we actually went out on a search for batteries. I said, look, I want a battery that is going to be environmentally friendly. It can't like cause a disaster at the end of the day. I want it to be built by a company that's still going to be around 20 years from now, so I don't to get stuck with the goods and the warranty that's worthless. And that company's been growing. Our biggest market, we first started in Hawaii. Now we have 90 dealers across the country. We train them how to install our batteries. And our biggest customer now is in Puerto Rico, because Puerto Rico's already had the disaster, and after the disaster, everybody's bought diesel generators, and they're horrible and expensive and noisy and everything. So if anybody's looking for an investment, I've already put $10 million into this. We're looking for more money because we can grow. I've been, Blue Planet Energy. Blue Planet, they're all Blue Planet. So, Blue Planet Energy. And so that's a little plug, I had to put that in there, sorry. But as Chip mentioned, the latest and greatest thing is I was invited to the IPU, figured out that it's not enough to just fix this country. And we talk a lot about what we talk about in this room is about how to fix this country and how to maintain democracy and these evil companies that are like affecting our politics. But there are other countries that have completely different systems of government, that if we don't fix them too, we're still screwed. You know, and so how do we deal with China? China's obviously not going to have a democratic movement of people that are going to say go protest, although they're doing it in Hong Kong. If that was on the mainland, those people would be gone by now. You know, the fact that they're in Hong Kong or they're not in China is protecting them. But China isn't the kind of place where you can have a grassroots movement and change stuff, change the government. So we have to have a totally different strategy. And there are a lot of other countries with lots of different systems of government. So my next foray is we've created the Blue Planet Alliance. The Alliance, this is the problem. We have thousands of NGOs all yelling something and nobody's listening because each individual NGO doesn't have enough of a voice. We need to have all of our voices put together and yell the same thing at the same time. We can all take turns, whatever it is. But all the NGOs need to get together. We cannot do this as little individual efforts. It has to be one massive effort. And so we're opening an office next to the United Nations. This is right next door, based on the John Powers model. And yes, I flew to Denver the other day on the red eye to find out what that was all about, and it's perfect. I'm not about reinventing the wheel. It's been done somewhere else, then I want to do that, because we have a lot of important things to do besides inventing wheels. So John, thank you for joining us as a anchor tenant in the Blue Planet Alliance. And anybody who has an NGO who's on the same page of, we've expanded. It isn't just about renewable energy. It's about everything. So we're talking about the regenerative development goals, the next 15 years of the United Nations, which culminate in the 100th anniversary of the United Nations. And we have to solve everything. We have to be sustainable. We cannot be having waste anywhere. No waste into the air, no waste into the ocean, no waste into the land. We have to solve it all. And we have to have that. I say 2045, that's our deadline. But actually what happens, we made that deadline in Hawaii, and we're quickly pulling that date forward. So that's what we do. Once we set the deadline, then we all work together and we bring that date forward as much as we. I want countries competing to see how quickly they can go. I want companies competing to see how quickly they can go renewable. And we should support those companies and those countries. That's what we should do.
Thank you, Hank, for your, sorry, I got the wrong mic here. Thank you.
Roll test.
1, 2, test 3, 4. Okay, that one. Okay, great. We'll block that. Thank you, Hank, for your visionary leadership along with the rest of the panelists here. Now, I'd like to move to the end here to Mr. Trammell Crow, who also serves on the AREI Board of Trustees. Thank you very much, both of you gentlemen. But Trammell's an extraordinary guy. He comes from Dallas, Texas. And when I met Trammell, and he told me that he was committed to funding something, at that point it was called Earth Day Texas.
Earth Day Dallas.
Earth Day Dallas. And then Earth Day Dallas turned into Earth Day Texas. And Earth Day...
bigger.
Because everything's bigger in Texas. You will learn that in the next few minutes. And that then was rebranded into Earth X. Brilliant move.
Even biggest.
We have SpaceX, we have Ocean X, we have Earth X, and that's sitting over there. But what's truly extraordinary about this gentleman's philanthropy is that he lives in Dallas, Texas, the home of fossil fuel wealth. And he's an avowed Republican, I think, still. Yes, and Trammell has been banging the green drum down in Dallas, and I will tell you that drumbeat is beginning to be heard out in Texas, but also in the United States of America and beyond, internationally. So Trammell, could you tell us a little bit about what motivates you to continue to do the biggest Earth Day event in the world over at Fair Park? I've been there 5 times. It's absolutely extraordinary.
I've been here 4 times.
Thank you for coming. Okay, so.
Yeah, I can tell you some of that, but I can tell you a lot about how big Earth X is. And thank you for that green drum. We got to use that.
Yeah, there you go.
The green drum. Ordinarily, I don't talk so much about big. But Gene Karpinski told me that he learned that big is good and bigger is better. Gene's been with us too, and we just a little while ago said he'll try to join us on April 22. This talk here on so many different facets of the environment, lasering in on climate, like John said, as we must, doesn't talk about Earth Day very much. Earth Day is a term, it's a great term, but Earth doesn't happen as a happening it used to. The reason I say that is because next year, April 22, 2020, will be the 50th Earth Day. Some of you all were there at the first one.
I was.
Thanks. See?
Get out of here.
Do I hear it? A lot of you were at them when they got a little smaller, and then in the 80s they kind of got little. And today they're not. There's street parties and rock and roll concerts and trash cleanup afterwards. So since it's my gig, Earth Day, and since the next one is the 50th, I implore you to come to Dallas, Texas, where it's going to be the biggest one, or to your local sheriff or your neighborhood, or Denver, Colorado, for Earth Day, because it's a movement. Meanwhile, we can work on all our various solutions and philanthropies, but on that day, let's unite and wake everybody else up. To begin, I was trying to listen to John talking about philanthropy so I could give an intelligent answer also, and then I remembered, first I got to make an announcement. This fellow was in my hotel room last night, and he picked up a bumper sticker that said, "Trees are the answer." And Mr. John Bellamini of the Center for the Greater Good said, he's planting 1 trillion of them. I said, well, that's big. And so I gave him a whole handful of them, and he went to the hotel room. Under the door, he slipped them. And so I promised him if he did that, I would announce today that he had done that. John, thank you, John. Along the lines of methane detector and philanthropy, I also have contributed to the Environmental Defense Fund for methane detectors in Texas. They're little, but there's a lot. They're detecting big. But philanthropy in America and Texas is also big. Sometimes it's big in the wrong direction. In politics, typically, it's pretty damn mixed. But outside of politics, the philanthropy in Texas is really good. Except for, and on the environment, except for one thing, we don't really contribute towards the battle against climate very much, but we do a damn good job of working on land conservation and wildlife conservation. My own philanthropy, my story, was I learned the word environment when I was 12. Always knew it was the most important thing. But I was like everybody else, you know, I went to school, then I had to college, I got married, I became in the household stage of my life and business, and went along that way. I'm not sure many people here have had more business careers or NGO careers, but most people aren't in the NGO world, they're in business, like Business America's business. And when you're in that mode, or I anyway, thought, I will do that. I'll make my mark. It's not about making your mark. I'll work for those causes I believe in. But I kept on being out there. And I thought, like, when I retire, I'll do that. And that's a good model when there's not imminent existential danger. There used not to be, we thought, but now there is. So I woke up and realized you don't give it away, and you will. You give it away all the way along, and you try to tax plan so well that you can make it that way. And there are a lot of people in Texas who do that. So then came Earth Day Dallas. In addition to giving to environmental groups and NGOs, I built this organization with 800 exhibitors. I'd say about half of those are NGO, universities, institutes, educational related organizations, environmental groups. We have created that platform so they can reach out. And I have outreach. We send foundations, community leaders, individual philanthropists to this big ball of wax, what we call EarthX. Because NGOs are all about volunteering, and that we're trying to create like you were saying, not just contributing money to NGOs, not just volunteering your time, but putting the public in front of all these environmental groups so they'll volunteer and they'll put in their time because they got more time than money. And I've got more money than time. Right? Right? Okay,
A good thing to have.
Speaking of EarthX, April 22, not 2020, next year, 26 of next year, there will be 800 exhibitors, 12 conferences. There will be, Tony, is it 11 banquets? 12 banquets? Okay. The film festival is the biggest. The hackathon is the biggest green hackathon in the world. And all hell breaks loose. Many of you all have been there, and Michael Caine's going to give me a balance say. And the film festival is throughout all those days. The 22nd is for speechifying. And Friday, Saturday is for Expo. We have a Mexican pavilion. Last year we had a hemp pavilion and a Colorado pavilion. You couldn't tell the difference sometime, but we're separating.
That's another green issue.
And then, furthermore, about philanthropy, the eCapital Summit is one of our conferences. For 3 years, we've had about 50 innovators in clean tech up for exhibit, and about 50 venture capital and family offices coming to them, and we match them up. $13 million was invested this last time. We hope for $25 million by next April 22, and then that eCapital Summit is going to be bigger. And there are my notes about Hank's life story. Friend. So we're going to send you a T-shirt, Hank, that says WWYWS. What would your wife say?
All right, well, thank you, Trammell, for your very generous climate philanthropy. And I think I want to do a quick just flash here down the panel. If you could summarize your giving in terms of how you think that you can get the most bang for the buck, and let's frame it in the most bang for the climate buck, given the fact that we have 10 years, Prince Charles says we have 18 months to change our direction. Others, the numbers are unclear, but I will tell you this, that we are putting up at least 40 billion tons of carbon each year on top of the 2 trillion that we put up since we really started burning it in earnest. And science indicates that we've got to remove about half of that. The good news is that we know how to do that. Direct air capture is real. We have experts in the room that you'll hear from later on that will tell us how we can physically do that. You know, human beings, Homo sapien, the smart man, woman, we can figure this out. But let's start at the end here, once again, with Ellen Dorsey, and if we could just have short comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of being a broken record, we are investing in movements to build power. The only way systems will change is if we have powerful movements standing up to those that profit from the status quo. Full stop. And I will also say something that I think we've already heard on this panel, give until it hurts. The Standard Foundation pays out only 5% of their assets on an annual basis. It is time to get off your assets. Turn it over to the movements now. Double it, pay out 10, pay out 20%. We have no future without change now, so put the money in now.
Is that what,
Thank you, yes.
what Bullet Foundation has decided to do?
There's quite a few foundations that are committing to spend down. And let me just say that I think it's time that we demand not only that the large foundations divest from fossil fuels, invest in the solutions, that spend down and pay it out now.
But if the foundation gives more than 5% a year, aren't they cutting down the size
Yeah.
of
Let me just say, if I can just say this, then I'll stop. We talked on the last panel about the performance of your portfolio if you're divested and invested. In 2017, we did 21.6% returns. Our foundation fully divested, invested 16% in climate solutions, and a carve out of our portfolio for impact investments where we accept a lower than market rate of return. Still did 21.6%. We doubled our grant budget the next year. We refused to grow our endowment.
If you show me how to do that, I'll give more than 5%.
Talk to Tom.
This is what lightning rounds
Where's
produce.
Tom? Where's Tom?
This is what,
Tom Van Dyke.
there's Tom over there.
Not
Raise
that
your
I'm
hand, Tom,
plugging him, but he does run our
RBC,
money.
Royal Bank of Canada now. This is what lightning rounds produce, a climate philanthropy in action. Okay, we're talking about action here, folks. John.
Clearly, everybody, pay attention. Politics is not a spectator sport. You must get involved. In the late years of the 1980s, there was an intentional effort to make government the problem because people wanted to shrink government and make it small enough to drown in the bathtub. You must vote. You must get educated. You must turn out, and you must take other people with you, and you have to get engaged with state politics. If you don't know who your representative is, go meet your representative. This is not an option. This is an imperative. And as far as the other things, you never see a hearse with a roof rack.
Can't take it with you.
You cannot take it with you. And the last thing is this. We don't control human overpopulation. We will never control climate change. But if we don't control climate change, we will control human overpopulation.
Oops. Okay. Well, thank you, John. Spike.
Yeah, well, I would double down on what John said about political activism. It's extraordinarily important. The reason we have the Orange Nightmare and friends in power in Washington, D.C. is it couldn't be explained, I think, any more simply than apathy and ignorance. There was, I believe it's accurate to say, approximately 71,000 votes decided that election. That's inexcusable. That's absolutely inexcusable, and it's because people were apathetic. We've become fat and happy in this country in particular, lazy as hell, and inactive and non-participatory. So I would, as I say, double and triple down on what John said. We have to be politically active. We absolutely must do that. The second thing I would say is I would elaborate a little bit on my relationship and my NGO, or its call's relationship with the MacArthur Foundation. I sat with Julia Stash, the president, back in January, and we were discussing what had to be done and how quickly it had to be done. And she's allowed me to say this in public. We wrestled with this a little bit. But we were sitting at a conference table, and she drew a circle about arm's length away, and she said, this is the climate crisis. And she drew a circle closer to her, and she said, this is what the MacArthur Foundation has been doing forever. And she said, if we don't fix that, then this doesn't matter. Take it from the top. Julia Stash is a wonderful, wonderful person, and I now work very closely with her in Lever for Change, an affiliate of the MacArthur Foundation, to which moved the three brilliant women who sat at the top of the MacArthur Foundation. They're all now over at Lever for Change, so I can work really closely with them there. And the whole idea at Lever for Change, this is my second point that I'd like to make to everybody, is leverage. Leverage, leverage, leverage. I have a long career in commercial real estate, and I own stuff around the country, and I did it with leverage. So most of you understand that concept and how it works, and the fact that in theory it can cut both ways and all that stuff. But what I'm talking about now is in the realm of leverage is building blocks. And this is what Lever for Change is all about. They're about getting individuals, philanthropists, be they foundations or individuals, to commit to a project, and in so doing, encourage others to join, to come in. And that's what we must do, because our time is so short. So we must make a concerted effort to constantly ramp up. And matching grants, that sort of thing, that works all day long. A tiny example, of course, is when you have somebody who is picked to lead a paddle raiser at a fundraiser. And this groups that I'm familiar with and have backed for a long time in Denver and in Colorado have asked me to do this several times, to sort of be the guinea pig and step out there and put out some money and put it out in such a way that it's really only good if it's matched. And it works all the time. So let's use that concept. Let's really explore and exploit that concept of bringing in people and using leverage as much as we possibly can to generate the massive amount of money that's going to be required to deal with these problems, and also the massive amount of participation. And shortly, Ellen and I will give you our thoughts on that with a specific group that we feel will be absolutely immensely important in driving this whole movement forward.
Thank you, Spike, and it's really extraordinary to get this kind of visionary leadership here in the state of Colorado. Deeply appreciative. Hank.
So if you've managed to create a nest egg, if you've accumulated any wealth, don't die with your money. This is back to John's point. Figure out what it is that pisses you off about the world and use your money to fix that. Now, I'm not only asking you for your money because that's the easy thing to do. I'm asking you for your time. The reason that you have built up this wealth is that you're clever and you have some ability. We need those abilities to go up against the fossil fuel industry, for example. We need those abilities to fight climate change. So I'm not asking you just for your money, I'm asking you for your time. I'm asking you for your mind share. So we've got, wow, no time left.
We have to change.
Isn't that
It's
exactly
magic,
where
isn't
we're
it?
at? We have no
It's
time.
magic, isn't it, Hank? We have. I think what Hank is trying to say is that we have to change our minds about this, and that's the first thing that we've got to do.
Well, Hank whispered over to me, and I donated my time to him just now. So, any questions?
Well, I wanted to. I've actually taken license to add a little bit of time to this panel because there's something very important that's about to happen right now. But before that does happen, I want to make sure that everybody understands that AREI is strictly nonpartisan. We're a non-political organization. I am personally a registered independent from the purple state of Colorado. And we like to think in Colorado, as goes Colorado, so goes the nation. And we're interested in building green bridges between Denver and Dallas, and between Colorado and Texas, as an example, but all other 50 states. And really looking forward to working with my dear colleague Bill Shireman here. We've had a long-running conversation about how can we bridge red and blue with green. Like our old AREDAY alumni, Tom Friedman, has said, the new color of red, white, and blue is green. And we really need to bridge the divide in our great country that perhaps has never been deeper since the Civil War. And it's time now. And I like to think that what's happening here on this panel is doing exactly that through their climate philanthropy. So please give them a big hand. Microphone, please. Please stay seated. We're going to do something extraordinary now that's not in the program. We would like to have the youth leaders that are joining us to take the stage. There's an extraordinary announcement that's going to be made right now between the Wallace Global Fund, Alan Dorsey, and Spike Buckley and Earth's Call. So if you, I'd like to introduce Katie Eater here. Katie, she is the 19-year-old founder of something called Future Coalition, and Shea Batista, she is the 17-year-old founder of Fridays for the Future, and then Chutezcot Martinez, who you may recognize from his past appearances here. He's with the Earth Guardians, and I'd like to first maybe Alan and Spike, if you could stand and then just talk about a little about the vision of what you'd like to do. If this, why don't we just take your microphones off? I'm going to pass you a hand mic. That'd be great. So we don't trip anybody up here. Nobody falls off the stage. That would not be good. Okay. Okay. So Alan, why don't you lead off here?
Actually, I'm not going to say much because I think we have the opportunity to hear from these young leaders, and you don't need to hear from us. All I'm going to say is that our foundation is absolutely committed to supporting the success of these youth activists. And we are increasing our resources to support the climate strikers and to support the youth movements calling for Green New Deal divestment, etc. We need you to succeed where our generation failed. And I think it's absolutely crucial that everybody in this room support the strikers. It's not enough that your day job is in renewable energy. We are all activists now. Get in behind them and strike with them. Thank you.
I would obviously support wholeheartedly everything Ellen just said. And I would say that I was searching for a way to make the first grant from Earth's Call. We're brand new and we're basically getting our house in order right now. New board of directors, new this, new that, new executive director, the whole thing. So we're not really in a position to do what we will do henceforth, but this is something that came across my desk, as it were, very recently, and I couldn't help but be extremely excited about it, because I think if we have one element, one force that might be able to bring about change quicker than otherwise, I think it's the youth. It's the children of the people and the grandchildren of the people who have created the problem. And Ellen and I, the Wallace Global Fund and Earth's Call, want to support now and going forward the youth of the world as they rise up and confront the parents and the grandparents who have not given the current problems enough attention. That's why we're doing what we're doing, and I hope all of you will get behind this youth movement. Make it, if you will, please do what you can to help these people, these young people, change the world, because I believe they can do it. And here we have 3 extraordinary examples, and there are many more out there. These are leaders, and there are many behind them who are creating this wave. So please, please do whatever you can to help them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Spencer. Thank you, Alan. Now, I'd like to hear from each of the youth leaders here, but I want to frame this in that right now we know that Greta Thunberg is on a ship, a sailboat, non-fossil fuel, coming across to America, coming to New York to be part of the climate strikes that will take place. I believe it's starting on the 20th. I'm going to let Shie kick it off here, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your work in New York and then just go right down the line. Thank you.
So Katie and I are actually going to speak together, and I'm going to start introducing myself. Hi everyone, my name is Shie Bastida. I am a 17-year-old climate justice activist. I was born and raised in Mexico, and now I live in New York City, and I strike outside of the UN every Friday.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie Eder. I am 19. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I am the executive director of the Future Coalition. The Future Coalition is a network of youth-led organizations and youth organizers across the country. So we work to make sure that young people have the resources that they need to create the change they want to see in their communities. And right now we are working to help coordinate the national campaign around the September 20th climate strikes.
What's good, everybody? My name is Xutesca Tonanti Martinez. My family's from Xochimilco, Mexico City. My mom's from here in the States. My mom founded the Earth Guardians movement back in 1992. We've been carrying the torch ever since then to build a platform worldwide for young people to be able to utilize our voice, our passion to create change, to create impact, and to really mobilize to rise with the tides to match the urgency of the time we're in right now. Thank you.
So the climate crisis. We all know it's a problem, and I want to thank all of you because we all know that we're here to solve that and to reverse that. And it's particularly important for us because I have not only lived through it, but I know it's going to get worse for our future. Young people are 20% of the present, but we are 100% of the future, and I heard that yesterday, and it's true. So that's why we started striking, because strike is a last resort. Our civic duty is to go to school, and we're saying we're not going to go to school because how can you ask us to study for a future that will not be there? How are you asking us to study if you're not listening to the people who are educated, and that's all of you? And that's why we started striking. Greta Thunberg started striking on August 20th of last year. And on March 15th, we had our first global climate strike with 1.5 million students striking worldwide. On May 24th, we had our third global climate strike with 1.9 million students striking worldwide. And now, September 20th is special because we're asking adults to strike with us. This is a collective effort that won't be solved by only striking because we don't have the voting power. You do. But we all have the responsibility to be heard. We had the responsibility, we had the right to be heard, but now we have our responsibility to be heard. So now I'm gonna pass it to Katie.
So as she had mentioned, we're really using September 20th as an opportunity to bring together the energy and the passion and the media spotlight that youth climate organizers have right now with the infrastructure and the foundation and the experience that so many adults, so many of you have been laying down in the climate movement for the last many decades. We're using September 20th as an opportunity to expand the table and to really look at it, not just as an endpoint of what's already been done, but as a launch for a new wave of the climate movement that's going to bring us closer to the solutions that we need to save our future. And we're doing that by uniting a broad coalition, youth-led organizations, adult-led organizations, institutional, grassroots, social justice, environmental. So many folks are coming together to make this day as large and as impactful as it possibly can be, because we are stronger together. And so it's going to take each of us to join together to make this day the launch of the climate movement we need.
And that is something very important. September 20th is not a goal, it's a catalyst for future action. It's a catalyst for the engagement of humanity in the protection of Mother Earth. It's a catalyst for the culmination of thousands of climate activists that won't stop fighting until the climate crisis is reversed. And I'm sure you've all heard about the 12 years that we have. And those 12 years have actually become 10 years and 5 months. We have 10 years and 5 months to halve our carbon emissions, to stay under the 1.5 degrees of warming. And for those who have heard 18 months, that is because we have 18 months to shift the political agenda in order to save our future. So I encourage all of you to use the voting power you have, and we promise that we are going to ask anyone who's 18 and older to do it, because they have to do it for themselves and they have to do it for us.
The message for September 20th is simple. We're scared. This is our future, and we're really scared, and that's why we're doing this. But we're not just striking out of fear. We're striking out of hope that something can be done. We're using September 20th as the invitation to say to everyone, young people and adults, individuals, elected officials, executives at companies, the message is simple. We are at a crossroads, and we have the option to choose between money and power, or to choose us, to choose the kids and to choose the future. And so our message for you is to join us in that. Join us, back us. As Shia said, the strikes today have been youth. And now it's the time for all of you to join in with us. And we need you, in whatever way you can, in whatever way you are able. We need each of us to join together and use our collective voice to demand change.
When I was 6 years old when I first got onto a stage in Boulder at the band show to talk about environmental and climate justice. And I would dream about moments like these when it would be me alongside other powerful, inspired, strong young leaders that are stepping up and really changing everything we thought we knew about what creating change could look like. I think our generation is an example of a new wave of this new step as humanity that we can take, that we deteriorate and destroy the barriers and the borders that have separated our movements, that have separated our communities, that have separated our organizations, to really understand that this is bigger than the climate crisis, this is bigger than politics, this is bigger than the environment. This is about the world and the future we are building together. This is about the collective responsibility that we all have to come together regardless of who we are as entrepreneurs, as doctors, as parents, as teachers, as innovators, as dreamers, as artists, to be a part of something much bigger than any one of us. And we are in an absolutely critical and beautiful moment. There is so much beauty in the moment that we are in right now. And for me to be up here like with these other young heroes is absolutely beautiful, and I really want you guys to know, and even though there's not a whole lot of young people like us in the audience, mad love to all the old people as well out here. Shout out thank you for showing up, we need y'all as well. But there is a whole generation of young people like us that are ready, that have been ready to take this action to the next level, to really understand how do our voices, how does the way that we show up in the streets, in our courts, in our communities, in our schools, and out of our schools, how does that represent the future that we want to collectively create together? So I love what y'all said, that September 20th is a catalyst for the movement and for the momentum that we are building from here on out to draw the carbon out of the atmosphere, to cap CO2 emissions, to reverse the climate crisis. And it is gonna take each and every one of us. This is for our entire generation. This is for my little sister who's 11 years old, who's in this room today. This is for all the young people that we love, that we care about, that we know, and those that are yet to come. And I just like couldn't be more honored and inspired and excited to be a part of a movement that is like, you know, is powerful. And so the work that we're doing, Earth Guardians, in partnership with Fridays for Future, in partnership with Future Coalition, is gonna be the how do we continue building and propping up that back end by allowing people to engage and draw down, by building the platform for young people worldwide who don't have that community yet to be able to tap in and engage and using their voice, their passion to create the change that we know is possible in the world.